The city had always been a place of secrets, but none more tantalizing than the legend of the Phantom. His heists were flawless, swift, silent, and precise. For years, he'd stolen millions from the richest banks, museums, and private collections, leaving behind only the faintest traces of his presence. No fingerprints, no witnesses, not even a hint of a clue. The police had been baffled, their best investigators chasing shadows, always one step behind. His reputation as an untouchable thief had earned him a kind of mythic status, but his next target would be unlike any before. The Crown Street Art Museum housed one of the finest collections of Renaissance paintings in the world. For years it had been untouched by crime, but rumors began to swirl that a priceless Van Gogh was secretly housed in one of its hidden vaults, a painting thought to have been lost for over a century. To anyone else it would be an impossible heist, but to the Phantom, it was the perfect challenge. He had studied the museum's security for months, watched the guards' routines, analyzed the alarm systems, and learned the weak points. He knew the exact moment to strike. The night was set. Emily Hayes, a rookie police officer assigned to the museum's overnight security detail, was the only thing standing between the Phantom and the painting. It was a boring job, one of the most uneventful posts in the department. Emily had always dreamed of becoming a detective, but this was just a stepping stone, a temporary gig to pay the bills. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. The Phantom had a plan, and Emily had a secret. Beneath her uniform and the badge she wore with pride, she had been hiding something that no one at the station could ever suspect. For months she'd been secretly involved with the very man she was supposed to catch. It had started innocently enough, a chance meeting, a shared connection, and before long, a dangerous affair that she couldn't seem to end, even though she knew it was wrong. The thrill of being with him, of knowing his plans, kept her coming back for more. On the night of the heist, Emily stood at the security desk watching the monitor as the museum's cameras blinked in the darkness. Everything appeared normal. She glanced at her watch, midnight. But something in the air felt off, a strange tension and unspoken energy that she couldn't explain. Suddenly, the museum alarm system flickered and went silent. Then she heard it, the soft click of the vault's door as it opened. Her heart raced. The Phantom was inside. Emily stood frozen for a moment, her mind battling between her duty and the man she loved. She knew what was at stake. She knew that the authorities would soon flood the building and that there would be no escape for either of them if she didn't act fast. But what if this was her last chance to be with him? What if this was the moment that defined their future? As the thief made his way toward the treasure, Emily's decision was made. Or perhaps it was made for her. She couldn't stop the adrenaline from surging through her veins. In an instant, she left the security booth and crept down the hallway, her footsteps barely making a sound. She was torn between fear and desire, guilt and passion. She had no idea that the night was far from over. Emily Hayes never thought she would end up here, a rookie officer in a city that had long felt like a stepping stone to a bigger future. She had always dreamed of solving cases, catching criminals, and making a difference. But none of that had prepared her for the man who would change her life forever, the one who, in a twisted turn of fate, would also become the criminal she was tasked to catch. It had started innocently enough. A routine undercover operation meant to gather intelligence on a string of robberies plaguing the city's art scene. Emily was there to observe, to blend in, and to gather information. The target of the sting was a man known only by his alias, the Phantom, a thief whose name sent shivers down the spine of every investigator. His crimes were legendary. He had evaded capture for years, and with each successful heist, his notoriety only grew. No one knew what he looked like, only that he was a master of his craft, capable of slipping through the fingers of the law like sand. Emily was assigned to keep an eye on an art gallery, one that had recently been linked to the Phantom's movements, but what she hadn't expected was to lock eyes with the man himself. He wasn't exactly what she had imagined, a cold, ruthless criminal, but rather a composed, charismatic man who seemed to blend effortlessly into the crowd. When their eyes met, there was an undeniable connection. It was electric. Their brief conversation was polite, professional even, but there was something unspoken between them, something dangerous. She had been trained to detect lies, but she couldn't tell if he was being truthful or if he was playing her. The intrigue lingered long after he left the gallery. Days passed, but Emily couldn't shake the memory of that meeting. He had left a mark on her, one that she couldn't ignore. It wasn't long before he reached out, a simple message through a secure channel, asking her to meet. The tension was palpable. Emily knew the risks, knew how dangerous it was to even consider meeting him. But there was something about him that called to her, something that she couldn't resist. Their first meeting was in the shadow of an old, forgotten building at the edge of the city. He wasn't threatening, wasn't domineering. Instead, he was calm, collected, with a quiet intensity that drew her in. They spoke about nothing at all, the weather, the city, their lives. But with every passing word, the connection deepened. They met again and again. The stolen moments were filled with a quiet thrill, the thrill of living on the edge of danger. Emily knew it was wrong. Knew that her duty as an officer was to bring men like him to justice. But every time they met, she felt herself drawn further into his world. Soon, the meetings weren't about small talk. They became moments of escape from their lives, from the expectations placed on them. She learned more about him, his quiet ambition, the art he had always admired, the pieces of history he longed to possess. He wasn't a common criminal, not in her eyes. He was a man driven by something more profound, something she couldn't quite understand, but felt nonetheless. She tried to stay detached, tried to remind herself of her duty, but the lines between right and wrong became increasingly blurred. She found herself falling deeper into the affair, her role as an officer slipping away with every kiss, every whispered promise. She knew she was risking everything, her career, her future, her morality, but she couldn't stop herself. It was as if the thrill of living a life she knew she shouldn't be living had consumed her. With every stolen moment, Emily was losing more of herself. And she knew that one day, one mistake would unravel everything. But for now, she was trapped in the intoxicating grip of a love that was both forbidden and dangerous. And as the days passed, she realized that the deeper she went, the harder it would be to escape. The museum had always been a safe haven for Emily Hayes, a place of calm and routine. Her job, though far from glamorous, was meant to keep the treasures inside the Crown Street Art Museum safe from harm. Night after night, she patrolled the dim hallways, checked the alarm systems, and monitored the security cameras. It was an uneventful existence, far from the high-stakes world of criminal investigations she had once dreamed of. But tonight, everything felt different. There was an unusual tension in the air, a quiet unease that seemed to settle over the museum like a storm cloud. Emily had seen it before, the faint flicker of the security system as it was triggered by some outside influence, a malfunction or a glitch. But this was different. Tonight, the lights on the control panel blinked erratically, followed by a sudden silence. The usual hum of the cameras was gone, replaced by an ominous stillness. Her heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. She reached for the radio clipped to her uniform, but before she could speak, the soft, unmistakable sound of the museum's front door opening reached her ears. She froze. The phantom was inside. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. She had been given no warning, no heads up about any planned heists. Emily's mind raced, her training kicking in even as her hands trembled. This was it, the moment she had been dreading. She had been working against the Phantom for months, helping to coordinate the investigation, keeping track of his movements, all while secretly becoming entangled in a forbidden relationship with him. But now the line between ally and enemy had blurred beyond recognition. As Emily made her way toward the main gallery, she could hear footsteps in the distance, light but purposeful. She knew the layout of the museum inside and out, the hidden corridors, the secure vaults, the alarm system that could be overridden with a few quick moves. She also knew that the Phantom knew it just as well. They had planned this moment together, the heist that would change everything. He had been playing a dangerous game with her from the start, and now she was an unwilling accomplice in his latest crime. When she turned the corner into the next hall, she saw him. He stood there, cloaked in darkness, his back to her. The figure was everything she had imagined and more. Calm, calculated, a ghost in the night. Emily couldn't make out his face, but she didn't need to. She knew it was him. She had seen it in his eyes before, the way he carried himself with an unsettling confidence. He was no mere thief. He was a mastermind, a man who could slip in and out of the most secure places without leaving a trace. But as Emily stepped closer, something unexpected happened. The phantom seemed to sense her presence before she even spoke. Without turning around, he raised a hand as if to acknowledge her silently. It was a gesture that sent a chill through her, a sign that the game they were playing had reached a point of no return. The vault doors, once secured by a complex system of alarms and locks, stood open before them. Emily's pulse quickened. The Van Gogh was inside, the priceless painting she had been ordered to protect. But now she found herself at a crossroads. The man she had been secretly working with, the man she had fallen for, was standing in front of the very thing she was sworn to defend. The tension between them, palpable and thick, hung in the air like a suffocating fog. For a moment, neither of them moved. Emily felt the weight of her choice pressing down on her. She knew the authorities would be arriving soon, drawn by the silent alarm she had triggered. This was her last chance to make a decision, to either stop him or let it all unfold, knowing that once the deed was done, there would be no turning back. But before she could make up her mind, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Her heart sank. Time had run out. The aftermath of the heist was chaos. Emily had always imagined what it would be like to catch a criminal, to see the law win and justice served. But now, standing in the cold light of reality, she realized that what she had imagined was nothing like the truth. The museum was in disarray, and the once sturdy walls of her life were crumbling fast. The phantom was gone, slipping through her fingers like sand. Then, all that remained was the tangled mess of lies and guilt that she couldn't escape. Emily had triggered the alarm herself, but not in the way she had intended. Her moment of hesitation, her instinct to protect him, had set the entire investigation into motion. The police arrived just in time to catch a glimpse of the thief disappearing into the shadows, but there were no arrests, no immediate answers. The trail had gone cold, and the museum was left with only the haunting emptiness of the stolen masterpiece. The days following the heist were a blur of interviews, questions, and suspicion. Emily's role in the event didn't go unnoticed. She was a rookie cop, after all, assigned to the security detail at the museum and the one who had triggered the alarm. The investigators pored over the evidence, scrutinizing every detail, looking for a reason to pin the crime on someone. The fact that Emily had been in contact with the phantom, that she had been his secret lover, was a truth no one knew yet, but it wouldn't stay hidden for long. Emily's world was unraveling. The affair, which had begun as an innocent flirtation, had now turned into something far darker. She had been involved in the heists, yes, but she had also been manipulated. She hadn't seen it then, but now the truth was undeniable. The man she had fallen for, the one who had promised her a life of excitement and passion, was nothing more than a criminal playing her like a pawn. Her mind. She gazed for a long moment at him before saying he had known from the beginning that her connection to the investigation would help him evade capture, that her inside knowledge would be his advantage. It wasn't just the heist that shocked Emily, though. It was the realization that the man she thought she knew, the one who had shared his dreams and fears with her, was hiding something far darker than she could have ever imagined. The phantom wasn't just a master thief. He was part of a much larger network, one that included high-ranking officials in the police force. Corrupt figures who had been pulling strings from behind the scenes. And Emily unknowingly had been working for them all along. As the investigation deepened, more details began to surface. A pattern of strange financial transactions, secret meetings, and cryptic messages pointed to a conspiracy that stretched far beyond Emily's understanding. The deeper she looked, the more she realized she had been part of something far bigger than herself. Something she could no longer ignore. The walls closed in. Emily's involvement became undeniable. The evidence against her was clear. Her relationship with the Phantom had crossed the line from casual to criminal, and now she was implicated in the largest art theft in the city's history. The higher-ups in the department knew it too. They could see that Emily had been compromised, and they began to distance themselves from her. She was no longer the eager rookie. She was a liability. As the pressure mounted, Emily had a choice to make. She could run, disappear into the shadows like the man she had loved, or she could face the truth. The authorities had no idea about the web of corruption she had inadvertently become tangled in, but she did. And if she was going to make amends, if she was going to find redemption, she would have to expose the real criminals. Those who had used her, manipulated her, and forced her into a life of deception. The truth was out there, but it came with a price. It was a price Emily wasn't sure she was ready to pay. But as the investigation drew closer to its final conclusion, she knew that the only way to truly be free was to face the consequences of her actions and take down the people who had ruined her life in the process. Emily sat in the cold, dimly lit holding cell, her mind racing, her past choices, her lies, the affair, everything that had once seemed so intoxicating now felt like a heavy chain around her neck. She had tried to ignore the truth for so long, hoping it would disappear, but it was undeniable now. The web of corruption, her involvement in the heists, the stolen art, it was all catching up with her, and there was no escaping it. The authorities had all but made their decision. She was guilty, and there was no coming back from that. But as the hours dragged on, something shifted within her. Emily's once unwavering resolve had fractured, and now a flicker of something else emerged, a glimmer of clarity. Redemption. She knew that, despite everything, she still had a chance to do something right, to undo the damage she had caused. She had been manipulated, used by the very people she had sworn to protect, and now, in the silence of that cell, she realized what she had to do. She had to expose them. The Phantom was only one piece of the puzzle. The true masterminds were still out there, hidden behind a veil of authority, operating within the very institution she had once trusted. It was dangerous, this plan she was forming in her mind. It would mean going against everything she had once believed in. It would mean risking everything, including her freedom. But in her heart, Emily knew there was no other choice. She couldn't continue living in the shadow of lies. She had already betrayed her badge, her duty, her career. But she still had the chance to bring the real criminals to light, to ensure that no one else would be destroyed by the same system that had consumed her. She spent the following hours carefully mapping out her plan. Her former lover, the Phantom, had already slipped through the cracks. But there were others, higher-ups, powerful figures who had orchestrated the entire operation, pulling the strings from the shadows. These were the ones who had used her to further their agenda, the ones who had manipulated her into becoming a pawn in their twisted game. If she didn't act now, they would escape justice, and the cycle of corruption would continue. The plan was simple, and yet, in its simplicity, it was risky. She would meet with a trusted colleague, someone she had worked with in the past, someone who still believed in her. Emily knew that she couldn't expose the full extent of the conspiracy alone. She needed someone on the inside, someone with the power to move things, to tip the scales in her favor. This person would be her ally, the one who would help her navigate the dangerous waters ahead. It had to be tonight. The clock was ticking, and Emily knew that the investigation was closing in on its final stages. The authorities were piecing together the puzzle, and soon they would be coming for her. But she wasn't about to let them control the narrative, not this time. At midnight, she was ready. She met her contact in a quiet, secluded part of the city. The moment their eyes met, Emily could see the hesitation in their gaze. They knew what was at stake, and they knew the risks. But Emily had made her decision. She wasn't backing down. Together, they set the trap. Emily had gathered the evidence, the financial records, the phone logs, the secret meetings. It was enough to take down the corrupt officers, the masterminds behind the thefts, and the entire criminal network. She had spent weeks gathering it all, working in the shadows, getting information from unlikely sources. Now, it was time to bring it all to light. As they moved in, the plan unfolded exactly as she had hoped. The authorities stormed the hideout, catching the corrupt officers in the act, exposed for the criminals they were. The web of deceit was unraveled and the truth was finally revealed. Emily had made her move, and with it she had redeemed herself. But as the dust settled, Emily knew that her future was still uncertain. She had done what she had to do, but the consequences of her actions would follow her forever. She had taken down the corrupt system, but at the cost of her career, her reputation, and her freedom. The trap was set. The criminals were caught. Emily Hayes had redeemed herself at midnight, but the road ahead was long and the price she had paid was steep. Yet, in that moment, standing among the wreckage of her past, she felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt free. As the investigation concluded and the dust settled, Emily stood alone in the quiet aftermath. The trap had been set, and the corrupt officers were in custody, their secrets exposed for all to see. The phantom, too, had disappeared into the shadows, leaving Emily to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. The world had changed, but for her, nothing would ever be the same again. She had paid a steep price for her actions. Her career as a police officer was over. The trust she had once earned from her colleagues was gone, replaced by suspicion and betrayal. The once promising future she had envisioned now lay in ruins. Emily had sacrificed everything to bring the truth to light, to bring down the corrupt system that had used her as a pawn. But the victory felt hollow, the cost too high. In the quiet of her small apartment, Emily reflected on the path that had led her here. She had been a part of something much bigger than herself, caught between loyalty and deception, love and betrayal. The journey had been long, and the choices had been difficult, but in the end, she had made the only decision she could live with. She had chosen redemption. But as the days passed, Emily found herself wondering about the future. Could she ever truly escape the consequences of her past? Could she rebuild a life from the ruins? For the first time, she wasn't sure. All she knew was that the road ahead would be long and uncertain, but it was hers to walk alone. The story was over, but Emily's journey had only just begun.